Still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. We have some events coming up over the next 12 months. NUFC Matters End of Season Party takes place at the Tyneside Irish Centre on Friday the 22nd of May. Tickets are £10 and the doors open at 7 o'clock at the Tyneside Irish Centre. From Dialogue to Monologue by Arthur Mackenzie, a live script reading takes place on Friday the 5th of June at 7:30 at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Return of the Entertainers, a walking football match takes place at Gateshead Leisure Centre on Saturday the 6th of June, kick-off 12 o'clock. You can also have a chance to play in the game and take on the Entertainers. Go to our website for more details. Northern Horizon, a Blake 7 convention, and Rebel Base Northeast, a Star Wars convention take place on Saturday the 1st of August, 10 o'clock in the morning until 4 in the afternoon at the Copthorne Hotel on the Quayside. All of these events are in aid of Age UK North Tyneside Dementia, and tickets available from nufcmatters.co.uk. The Craze for a Dinage, Ronnie, Reggie and Me takes place on Wednesday the 11th of November, 7:30 at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. And an evening with Beardsley, Cole and Ferdinand takes place on the 29th of January 2027. Also at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. Box office for both of those events, 0191 243 1171. Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk is the website to book your tickets. If you're looking for something to read on your holidays, why not buy The Entertainers 1992 to 1997, Kevin Keegan's Legacy, or The Promoter and the Photographer, 25 years of bringing the stars to Tyneside. Both books available, nufcmatters.co.uk.
Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe.
Good evening, welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is the three Amigos, the perfect way to kickstart your international weekend, and boy do we need it after the week we had. But it is welcome to Mitch, to George, to Steve, welcome to you at home, and first of all a big thank you to everybody. Like a snail's pace, we did it. We had 54,000 subscribers this week. So a big thank you to everybody who has supported us. And we don't go begging for them. You know, you come along and you follow us on all the different outlets, Twitter, Facebook, etc. But to have 54,000 people who subscribe to the channel and dip in and out, nobody watches it all the time. We know that. But that's a massive thank you to you all. Thanks, everybody, because it really is something that we never take for granted. We enjoy doing the shows and we'll continue to do them as long as we physically can, I think, and share our views for the over 40s. But thank you to everybody. And it's great as well that you all get behind Age UK, North Tyneside, the chosen charity of this channel, and support them as well. And whether it's £100 or £1,000 or £5,000, whatever we raise, and we raise a hell of a lot over the course of 12 months. It's all down to the 54,000 people who tune in and out and chuck a quid our way when we ask you to for our events. So thanks very much. And the channel's performing well as well. I often give you the update. 82 new subscribers, which took us over the 54,000, 150,000 views, and 2.7 million minutes watched as well, which again is on par with what we've had since 2020. So thanks very much, everybody. As I say, we never take it for granted, and I know the lads don't. It often blows us away as well. And we're not here to compete with people. We're here just to stay in our own lane and do what we want to do, and that's what we do, So thank you to everybody. It's really, really good that we've hit that, and on to 55,000 next. We're ahead of St James's Park now, lads, which is great.
And thank you to all the lovely people who bother to come and say hello. That's very important as well.
Yeah, thank you, Denise, and thank you to everybody who's saying well done. It's you guys who've done it, so thanks very much for your kind words. I've got lots of things I want to talk about tonight. I do want to raise a little bit of awareness to those of you who've got an iPhone. I've spent my day, I've had my business part of my day. I'm planning a couple of events, which you'll hear about in the future, with Gated Council. I've had a great a couple of hours with an old pal at Gated Council today, and working on a couple of things in my professional life and professional career. But amongst my other occupation today, I've been dealing with Apple because there is an update on your Apple software. So anyone who's got an Apple phone, beware when you update it, because even if you're an adult, and they should be able to tell you're an adult. I mean, if you're paying your bill each month, etc., they ask you to confirm that you're 18, and it comes up in your settings. When it comes up in your settings, unfortunately, the only ID that they'll accept now is a credit card. I don't have one. Or a national ID card, not a passport, a national ID card. So I've had to go through the rigmarole of getting in touch with Apple. They're very good, Apple. They ring you up, and I've been on the phone half an hour with the guy. It's all down to our country. It's an absolute nightmare. So if you get that, you've got no option. Unless you've got a credit card, you're going to need to go and get a national ID card. So be aware. I'm just giving you a little warning. It's a very slippery way of getting an ID card in, by the way. Driving license, Tom. If you've got one, that's great. I don't drive, Tom. So I don't have a driving license. But it's a very slippery way of bringing something in where someone is getting a backhander and the police back it. It's the security industry. It's just ridiculous. So unfortunately, I've had to go through that today. So if you've got an iPhone, there you go. I'm not getting into politics, folks. I can see a few comments coming in already. Android, no, I could never use one of them, Roger. So yeah, there we go. That's been my day to day. So just in case it happened to you, I'll save you a little bit of time, because it took me 2 hours to get to the bottom of it and work it all out. You're going to need a national ID card if you're the same as me. Don't have a credit card or a driving license. Anyway, on to football. I'm not going to dwell on Barcelona and Sunderland anymore. We've done enough of that this week. I had to really big myself up this week to get through the fans forum, but it was okay. I got through it. I haven't had to go to counselling. But Christopher Shafi has sent us an email, because I have jotted a couple of topics down which I wanted to mention to the lads today, and I've got a couple which I'll highlight later. But we do like your email, so if you have got anything you want to get off your chest, send it over to us at our usual email address, nufcmatterspodcast@gmail.com, as Christopher has done. He says, "Hi Steve, opinions from yourself and the panel, please. I don't believe the current team understand what the derby means. And the main reason for that is because their manager doesn't. One of their massive reasons Eddie is loved by myself and the fans is his dedication to the cause. By all accounts, he spends more time at Darcy Park than he does at home. He wants this club to succeed as much as anyone. But I believe that the obsession he has with being in the training ground hasn't allowed him to truly understand the region in which he lives and works. He's lacking time in the community amongst the people and getting a proper feel for living here, in the way that Keegan and Bobby Robson understood us. It's understandable being from Buckinghamshire and spending most of his life in Bournemouth, where football isn't the be-all and end-all like it is here. But Do you think Eddie needs to find ways to immerse himself into the community a bit more? And I don't just mean for TV segments, but actually get out a bit more. Maybe he's just not that sort of personality, of course, but I think he's lacking a bit of Geordie identity. What are the lads' thoughts? Mitch, interesting that.
It's an interesting thought, but every time you hear him talk about his kids being at local schools, having Geordie accents, effectively being de facto Geordies, I don't think. I think it's a bit harsh to say he doesn't get it. But you do question what happened on that pitch. I'm still fizzing after. I've not had a chance to talk about it, really.
Go for it, Mitch, if you want to. I'm not going to talk about it, but you can.
And I'm at the point where, I've had a week sitting on this and it's still no better.
Get it off your chest, Mitch.
What happened at half-time? What did he say to those players at half-time that effectively took the wind out their sails? We went in at half-time, in control, cruising, looking to kick on, and second half, we were a shadow of the team in the first half. There are players on that pitch who look like they've checked out to me. One in particular, on the back of Barcelona and Sunderland. I wouldn't be disappointed if he never kicked the ball away again. And I think that's a damning thing to say about any player. But he's checked out, clearly. Why and who's allowing that to happen? There's so much of a disconnect going on at many levels in the club. We've got a CEO with his lovely new code. And sound bites and platitudes are great. But where's the action? We're still suffering for a lack of leadership over the summer. And I think we're only really now understand the depth of damage that the whole Isaac situation created. And complicit in that are people within the club and journalists who were writing one thing and then counter-writing with another one and then counter-writing with another one. Some saying they were getting stuff from the club and others denying that that's what the club had said. And we've got it all happening again already with Tonali. It's exactly the same scenario. And nobody is taking control of it. It allows conspiracy theories. What Chip is saying, it's not baffling. He apparently was close for the Sunderland game, and somebody, the manager, I presume, took a call that he wasn't going to risk him. And it's not beyond belief that he was close to play on Sunday and then could play for Italy in midweek. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's just one of a potential range of outcomes, and we shouldn't dwell on that. But because we're all locked into this cycle that we're in, that we've created some of it for ourselves, the derbies pushed a lot of people over the edge with Eddie. What I would say to the people who've been firmly Eddie out for a while, well, is this the scenario you wanted? Is this what you wanted? Is this what your version of happiness looks like? Because, good God, I want no part of that vision, thanks. But also, you've created a situation where conversations no longer have nuance. It's binary, it's in or out. So I'm going to hold everybody who's had a conversation like that to the same level going forward. If a new manager comes in and he's absolutely shite after 5 games, I'm going to hold you to that. Oh, no, there's going to be no or buts. And please don't send me any pictures of Jose fucking Mourinho. It's 2026, not 2006.
What about Rafa Benitez?
It's 2026. The footballing world has moved on, and so should we. We've created, though, the manager and the players have created a situation where the game, after that stretch of games that we had, that actually should have been the least important, the one I bang on about if we hold that game is the biggest game all we will ever be is the biggest club in the northeast of England. actually turned out to be the game that mattered the bloody most. And that includes getting the tanning off of Barcelona, during which, in that second half, some of those players checked out and didn't want to be on that pitch. Again, who's countenancing that? Who's allowing that to happen? Again, come back to the journalists reporting and counter-reporting. Where are some of these people getting their information from, in particular those who say they get it from the club directly? So who's leaking? Leaks within the club should never happen. And that should be jumped all over. I include leaks with emails from the CEO. And if whoever is responsible for that email being leaked to the press is the person I think it is, great, you've got to come and mate. You know who you are. But anyway, but then for those journalists to jump all over a quote from Vince Lombardi and supposed sports journalists who don't understand the significance of Vince Lombardi to sport and why his quotes are important. And yet there are some of the same journalists who jumped all over, oh, look, the Green Bay Packers kicker supports Newcastle United. Isn't this great? Newsflash, lads, guess which bloody team Vince Lombardi was the co-coach of when he made a lot of those quotes. Do a bit of research. It's all on there. If you're a journalist, you can use these. The whole world is in there. Journalists should journal. Instead of writing shite and stirring even more trouble within the club and within the fan base than we've got to deal with already. Then we've got the shouty podcasters who now are all getting very shouty and sweary. And it's just pure engagement farming. Some of whom have just turned on a dime. Is it because they're not getting special treatment from the club anymore and the people that they used to get fluffed from the club aren't there anymore? Who knows? And another lot should just stick to sending dick pics in the bloody DMs. And as for my good friend Brian, who still has me blocked on most social media, you're still a yam-headed tomfool, and I stand by my words. I do wonder if he ever got the big black one to fit or not. I've never really found out. But I see then people interacting with him because it's engagement farming off of his level of engagement. And people are manoeuvring already for things that may happen down the line, be that associated with the club, be that associated with Sky Sports and media roles and how the media is going to change. It's tiring. And we are a circus at the minute. And we're being used by everybody as a circus, and we're just allowing it to happen. We're not taking control of anything. For me, though, that result, that second half performance, and people are right, it's not the first time this season we've had a second half which has just totally been a massive contrast to the first half. It's not the first game we've gone ahead and lost. In fact, haven't we lost the most points from winning positions this season? Yeah. We've shipped more goals than ever. And while everybody at the club seems to be pointing fingers at the two centre-forwards that were brought in to replace Isaac, and then now they're not being used, the problem isn't scoring goals. The problem is the goals we're shipping and the times we're shipping those goals. And again, this is all part of a complex situation. And you're right, it is too simple just to point the finger at Eddie. Because the ownership have to take responsibility for their lack of leadership at the summer, which allowed things to develop into where it did. But we now are where we are, and we're at a point where I think for now, a growing section of the fan base, there is not a roadmap for Eddie back. And I wonder what we're going to see in these remaining games, because what season is, whether we like it or not, over. pipe dreams of finishing 7th and things falling into place for us to qualify from the Champions League from that point. I'll show my arse at the top of the Burj Khalifa if that happens. Although at the minute I'd be struck by fucking lightning knowing my luck. And it's just
or a missile.
One or the other, you know. Oh, what's that lawnmower noise? I am deeply ashamed of how we capitulated in 2 derby games this season. The only thing Sunderland had to offer, and it's the only thing they've had to offer all season, honest endeavour. And some of our players couldn't offer that. And some of them, I don't think, could care a lick. And that's wrong. And that's where I'm at the minute. And I really, really am concerned at the level of overhaul we need this summer. It's not a tweak. It's almost a rebuild.
Hope that's helped you. Steve, what's your feelings, mate? Not really.
My feelings, I mean, again, I'm like Mitch. I haven't had a chance to sort of share my thoughts on the derby game, other than with George after the match and during the match as well. We had plenty to share during the match. There was plenty that we pointed out to each other that we felt wasn't going right. I'm looking at some of the stats that we can bear out all sorts of the issues that Mitch is talking about. We talk about game management. Mitch mentioned it there, and about what happened at half time. It happened twice, didn't it? It happened at Barcelona in midweek, and then it happened again. We played very, very well in the first half, and then we come out in the second half, and it's like we've given up. It's like we just haven't been able to switch ourselves back on. Now, I'm looking at it, and you start to analyse things, and you start to look for reasons. Now, obviously, we made the substitution that was forced upon us with Botman suffering from concussion on 54 minutes. We conceded 3 minutes later. Now, that tells you something. That tells you that we've taken the defender off. We've brought the defender on. We're not well organised at the back. We haven't quite built up, bringing somebody new in. You're looking at it and you're thinking, lads, who's in charge at the back? Now, for me, it was Dan Burn. Dan Burn is controlling everything as the centre half, and he's responsible for what goes on in that box. And I thought that I'm questioning now, especially when only 8 or 9 minutes later, we then took Trippier off and brought on Livramento, again, like we did at Barcelona. And to be perfectly honest, Livramento, A, was not fit. B, looked totally disinterested, if I'm honest. His pace wasn't there. His touch wasn't there. And as much as people might have a pop at Trippier, I thought he was doing all right in the first half. I didn't think there was many major issues that he wasn't handling. But we brought 3 substitutes on at 65th minute. Valdemar went off. Willett came on. That says an awful lot. Elanga came off and Murphy came on. And you're thinking, okay, what's that all about? What benefit are you going to get from this? Because there was no benefit. There was no benefit in taking Elanga off and bringing Murphy on in terms of changing. There was no change of emphasis in the game. Our substitutes do not bring anything special back in. And we've said it time and time again on this platform. When we make a substitute, it doesn't benefit the team whatsoever. We don't make substitutions and think, right, great, so-and-so's coming on. This will really boost us now. It doesn't happen like that. We then took Barnes off on the 76th minute and brought Asula on. And again, after seeing what he did in a previous game, everybody's raving and going, this is it. This is the change we need. You do that, however, you immediately have to shift Gordon around. You've already shifted Murphy around in Elanga. There's too many positional moves happening. And then on the 89th minute, he takes Gordon off. Now, Gordon, for me, was the one player who I thought was going to bring something in the last 10 minutes to the game, because he was the only player who had brought something in the previous 85. We took him off at the 89th minute and we conceded in the 90th. And you're thinking, again, game management, organisation, what messages are going on to tell the players what we want from them, you know? It's just something that would, like, you can point your fingers at an awful lot of things, but it's the collective. It's like Mitch says, it's not just Eddie Howe and the players that he's sending on, or the players he's got at his disposal. Obviously, we're without Bruno, without Tonali. We all know the situation. We haven't had a striker for half a season. You know, we're getting nothing out of Valdemar in terms of goals. Getting nothing out of Elanga, full stop. We're lucky if we can get him on the pitch. Sula, he's had one good game for me, and all of a sudden he's back and he's rated at 30, 35, 40 million, and we're gonna build the team around him, because that's the fickle sort of nature of what's going on in football circles and supporter circles and social media circles, and young kids see one goal and all of a sudden the players turn into Lionel Messi or Dembele or somebody like that. You know, it's fascinating. But you look collectively, the organisation isn't there anymore. The heads are dropping. Mitch is right. There's some heads that are no longer there. There's some players just look to be cruising through to the end of the season. The utterance that are coming from both Eddie, not so much his coaching staff because they say nothing, but certainly from Hopkinson. We get nothing at all from Wilson, by the way. But from Hopkinson, it's kind of entering, with the results that we've had, into kind of David Brent country, to be perfectly honest. It's, you know, we're getting these cliched quotes and things like that Mitch has already mentioned. You know, actions speak louder than words. You know, I'd much prefer it if the chairman or the chief executive had come out and said, that was bollocks, lads. That was shocking. That was one of the worst performances. But he didn't. He's then come out. He's made some sort of secret tape to the staff in the club. That was, I don't know what the purpose of that was. Whether he feels as though lifting the heads of the ticket office and, you know, supporter services is going to do wonders on the pitch, who knows? But then even that got leaked by somebody. God knows why, and God knows by whom. Because, you know, by the mid-afternoon, that was all over the newspapers and all over the social media. So that tells you that there's something not right behind the scenes at the football club. If a chairman after a derby game, or a CEO after a derby game, has to put a message out to his own staff, you know, like
we look like a club,
you know,
who've forgotten how to play a derby match.
Yeah, exactly.
We look like a club who don't have any idea about what playing a derby match means, and the Mackhams look like they've been champing at the bit to get back at it, and have never lost it. And have we become that arrogant?
Yeah. If you look at some of the stats, I mean, we had nearly 60% of the possession in that game. Our goalkeeper had to make more saves than theirs, 4-3. We had to win more aerial duels than them. They committed far more fouls. We had more corners. So you look at the stats and they're all over the place. But from an attacking point of view, we had 16 shots and we only hit the target 4 times. They had 17 shots and hit the target 7 times, and they were away from home. And then they had 5 shots off target. We had 8. We had 8 attempts outside the box to their 6. We hit the woodwork once, and you think, hey, this looks good. We had more passes than them, but we had better pass accuracy than them. We had more back passes than them. We had more forward passes than them, naturally, because we had nearly 2/3 more, or a third more rather, possession passes than they did.
We probably had 700% more sideways passes than them.
Oh yes, aye. They you know, but defensively they won more tackles. The tackle percentage was higher. They committed more fouls. They beat us 6-1 in terms of bookings. That tells you an awful lot about how up for it the game they were. You know, spread right across the team. They weren't worried about sticking their foot in. They weren't worried about them then being dragged into some sort of situation where the fans get at the referee or anything like that. If they're willing to put tackles in that commit fouls and then get away without having any red cards, it tells you that they've got a lot of confidence in themselves right across the team. They were sharing the workload, if you like. But we ended up having to make more clearances than they did, and despite the fact that we had the ball more. So you look at all these stats and all these people who want to rattle off XG and all thing, you look at it, and that's what Eddie should be looking at. And it was a shambolic performance away from home. And as for the Mourinho situation, it made me laugh there, Mitch, when you were talking about you saying the game's moved on. 43 years after he previously was at Bristol City, Roy Hodgson's back at the age of 78, which is like, where's football? But then I started to like, and Martin O'Neill back in at Celtic at 74. Neil Warnock, he was at Torquay already this season. I think he's had 2 jobs this season, short term. He's 77. And down at Tottenham, they're crying out for Igor Tudor to go and to bring Harry Redknapp back. And Harry's 79, for God's sake. George, get your training kit on, because there might be a job here from now at the end of the season, the way things are going. It's football's all over the place. It is literally all over the place. But what's wrong with where do we look? Somebody put up there, and I agree wholeheartedly, the club went on a downward spiral because there was obviously all sorts of internal goings on when Miranda and Amanda left. We know that. They didn't go because they wanted to go. They were forced out. But Mitch is spot on. The hierarchy at the football club, it took 10 months to replace the Darren Eales who they knew was leaving. And they took 5 months to replace Mitchell with Wilson, and just left us to flounder at a time when we had all that going on with Isak. And the more you dig into it, the more you hear, the more you realize that the impact of Isak leaving has been an awful lot more difficult for the football club than just losing a top striker and having the hassle of replacing them, because I think it's had serious ramifications in that dressing room. There was various snippets went around in the past and people pointing fingers at one or two players, but I don't think we've really understood the dynamic of what went on, and I think we're still suffering from it, and we still will suffer from it in the summer, because I don't think it's going to be as easy a summer as some people think it is.
Yeah.
Listing 8 players and saying all these 8 will go, and look at the quality there is out there that we're going to bring back. It's going to be a long, hard summer, especially with the World Cup. So unless we're bringing in players, and if people want us to be Brighton, want us to be Bournemouth, they want us to be Brentford, and go out and start digging around, Central and Eastern Europe and South America, and bring players for 15, 10, 5 million. You know what? Unless those players are absolutely top class and nobody knows anything about them, nobody else in the country, are we really a football club that is going to bring in players just to sell again in a couple of years' time? Is that the only way that we can move forward? It's beginning to look like that. It's beginning to look like our model's going to turn into Brighton, or it's going to turn into Bournemouth, or it's going to turn into a Brentford, when really we all know what our model should have been. And they've got to get a grip of it quick. They really do.
Just getting back on track, Steve, though, I mean, I know you and Mitch wanted to get that off your chest, but Chris's question was about Eddie. And he said, do you think Eddie needs to find ways to immerse himself into the community a bit more?
You know what?
I mean, Eddie's doing everything else, isn't he?
Yeah, I don't think you need to immerse yourself that much. You live here anyway. As Mitch says, your kids go to school in Jesmond. You live in the city. You shop around the city. Your kids are playing football in the local boys' clubs. You're seen out and about. Do they want them to do a history lesson? They want them to start going to Newcastle Tech in the evening and immerse themselves in Geordie culture and history. You could spend half an hour with Billy Corcoran, and Bill would.
Just send him to Irish Centre to speak to Bill for an hour.
Yeah, that will teach him. He'll learn everything he needs to know Go with Dan Jackson and have a wander around for the day, and Dan will tell him all about if he feels he needs to know about the Roman wall or needs to know about, there's a new railway station open in Bedlington on Monday, and that used to be where we used to get all the steel to make bridges and stuff like that, on foundries. And if we think him knowing that about the city is gonna make him a better football manager, yeah, do it. But I don't think it will. I think Eddie's immersed himself in the football culture. I think he knows what went on in the past. He knows all about Kevin Keegan. He'll know all about Sir Bobby Robson. He'll know all about Rafa Benitez. He'll know about Joe Harvey. He'll know about the Fairs Cup. He'll know about our successful FA Cup runs in the 50s. He'll know all of that, but it's not... Immersing yourself in the history is one thing. Look, let's get back to the reality. I want him to be a top-class football coach. I want him to be out there being able to beat not the Barcelona of 1997, but the Barcelona of 2026. That's what he's got to do. He's up against managers who are probably 2-3 steps above him at the moment in Europe. He's pitted himself very, very well against PSG. I think he's unbeaten against them. But it's that step up, and it's that being able to everything in the round, 3 games a week, organising yourself, the difference between Premier League and FA Cup games, League Cup games, and then the European games. It's 4 different football clubs, if you like. It's 4 different competitions, and it's being able to handle yourself around all those. I don't know how they do it, to be perfectly honest, especially when you're dealing with exactly the same squad, and a squad who is, probably, 2/3 to 3/4 away from being anywhere near a top class squad that can pick and peak on all 4 channels. You look at Liverpool at the moment. They won the league last season, but they're struggling. But for some reason, their game this season seems to be better geared to European football than it has to the league. And that's probably because, again, he's had problems with strikers. You look at Manchester United without playing in Europe, that's getting up to the top of the league again. And that's a team that we don't think plays very, very good football, But this is the way football is at the moment. Arsenal, absolutely tremendous, top team, best team in the league, get beat 2-0 in the cup final. We've just got to get to grips with the fact that that's football, lads. That's the way it is. It's a result-driven business, and Eddie will eventually live or die by his results. We all know that, and Eddie knows that. He's not stupid. But at the moment, the season, we've just got to see it through at the end of the season, and unfortunately, the rebuild that we needed in last summer is going to happen this summer, but it's going to be doubly difficult because we've got to replace possibly some of the stuff that were brought in last season, and the players are a year older, and we've got to replace players who are now, we're seeing, are coming to the end of their working life, if you like, at Newcastle United. And that's going to be hard.
Yeah, it is. Great suggestion by Mark Byers. He says, where is it? He said you could actually send Eddie Howe back in a time machine to the 1990s and in Idols, some real Geordie culture. That's a great idea, mate.
Stuck to the floor.
George, you can concentrate a little bit more on the question that was at hand. Chris, about Eddie. Does he need to immerse himself more in the community? Do you think that's a little bit of the issue? Because it's centered around the derby, the question, really.
Yeah, not just Eddie. It's for me, it's the whole club. It is worrying that we've got a manager who has 2 chances to do something in a derby game, and he couldn't find 11 black and whites to kick hell out of 11 red and whites against a novice manager and a team that had 7 of their first team injured. And, there was only, by the end, there was only 1 team in it. A team that's only scored 8 goals away whole bloody season. And then we give them another 2 to go. So I'll stop the derby now because I had me say, and I was so upset last week I could hardly speak on Sunday and Monday. In fact, on Sunday in the Strawberry, I couldn't speak but there was a lovely lass give us a kiss to cheer us up, and I was so upset I didn't get her name and address, for God's sake. So what about the chief? What about our owners? Do they not think the derby's important? Why wasn't our chairman at the derby matches? He comes to all the big ones and sits beside this and that who are posh in Europe. Why wasn't he at St James's Park for the derby? Hasn't he worked out that the derby matches that are the two most important games of the year? Yes, like everybody else, I love the big games that we're playing. You know, yeah, we got beat off Manchester City twice in the two cups and PSG in the European Cup. Yeah, it was sad, but defeats you can accept. But the two defeats in the derby game you can't accept because we weren't there. And he wasn't there, showing his support in, as I say, in the two most important fixtures for people who wear black and white are those two. They'd gladly give up all the rest if they can win those two. And we never looked like winning. And you know, when you see you as well, you know, I have evidence to see that he's getting immersed in something because his performance so far of these great announcement of what's going to happen in 2030 are pie in the sky at the moment. Absolute pie in the sky. So he's somebody else that needs a dose of realism on Tyne's side. You know, the people that have got it were proud. And I know you laughed a little bit about Rafa, but Rafa got it, didn't he? Rafa's family got it in a way in which many people from outside never get it. But the current ownership, current managers, senior managers inside St James's Park, I don't think they've got it at all. It's just the day-to-day running any football club. This isn't any football club. This is the most important football club in the world to 500,000 Tynesiders. And when it doesn't beat the idiots from down the road, we get upset. We rightly get upset. And there was never any way we were gonna beat them. So whether it's Eddie that needs another dose of Geordie culture, or I tend to think it's higher up than Eddie. It's higher up the food chain. You know, I want to see the chairman at the derby games showing that the owners understand how important it is. And I want to see, you know, others involved with Newcastle United there at the derby games. You know, we let a novice manager turn upside down. And I thought I'd be better this week, having had a week to think about it. But it's worse because I've had time to analyse it, and it looks bloody worse. And one of the things that looks bad is the very question that's been posed about who's got the Geordie culture and who hasn't. And at the moment, it doesn't look very good. Who persuaded Eddie, for example? Who persuaded Eddie that it was a good idea after a match like that to have a lap of honour with the team? Bloody hell. What honour? What honour? We had to stand there and watch the Mackems take our stadium over, and all the Mackem players come out with their phones to take selfies in front of the cheering hordes from Wearside. And they were entitled to cheer because they won it fair and square. And there we were, traipsing around the pitch, being booed like hell from the Geordies that were left in the stadium. And the one thing that Eddie must know, surely, the ones who stay to the last like that are the diehards. And they won't forgive like very easily. If we get any more performances like that, he's going to have more of that to put up with. So it's a good question whether he needs it, but certainly there are those in the club and higher up the club, including the owners, who need to get a hold of what really is. And Steve said it earlier, and I was going to say it anyway. We had two people who not only got it but could sell it. That was Amanda and Maydad. They didn't just get it; they could sell it, and they could sell it. They could sell it to us. you know. And the other thing is, when they did things, you saw them getting done. You knew they'd been done. Some of the things that happen now are just nonsensical, difficult to cope with. And the other bit, of course, is that I go on, the lads on the forum will say, and on here, about how we've got some fantastic international players and what they do for their countries. Have a look at the internationals last night. Who were the stars? Tonali for Italy, and playing in a much more forward role than we play him in, and Elanga for Sweden. Tore Ukraine apart. We haven't seen that Elanga in black and white this year. What's the difference? What happens there that doesn't happen at St James's Park? So they're the questions I'd like to ask Eddie and his crowd. Try and show us that you've got the culture, because the only way you'll do it is winning bloody football matches. Promise you.
The only bit you missed there, George, was that when you were talking about Mierad and Amanda, was that they sold it to the players as well.
Yes.
The players bought into what they were saying. Now, I think that perhaps that there is a disconnect. Yes, you can leave everything to Eddie if you want, but I think when there's a disconnect, or it appears to be a disconnect between the hierarchy of the football club and the team, and they feel that the disconnect's there because they're not there.
The examples, we've all seen the examples. We don't need the journalists to tell us. Gordon was for transfer, and Amanda reputedly said to Evan, "It's 45 million and out, and he's ours." Or that's the end of it. No, humming and hawing. And Ashworth was dealing with Joe Linton's renewal of contract, and it was taking bloody months. 10 days with Amanda, and it was done. And we knew it was done. Now, why is, where's that gone? Where's the attempt to do something like that? Now, it's just very frustrating that this great takeover that we've got, and I still believe in it, obviously, but it's come off the rails a bit. It needs to be a reset. Whether we've got the right people in place to reset it remains to be seen. I mean, we're just talking about the CEO sending a video to all the staff. What the hell's wrong with getting them all in a bloody room and burning their ears with their voice? What the hell do you want to send a video for? They're human beings like everybody else. I can't stand this evasion of the modern technology allowed people to send emails and videos. And what's wrong with your voice? It means a lot more if he was to stand up in front of all those people and say, "Get your fingers out, we need something done here. That wasn't very good." And that'll last a lot longer than any bloody video.
Am I just picking up that Eddie's been nominated for Manager of the Month?
Yeah, he got nominated, yeah.
Who voted for that? Kensington Cracklovers.
I was just nominated for it.
Yeah, but who nominated? I mean,
the Premier League. Premier League, we won 2 games in the league.
Is that just to take the piss?
I think
so. That's it.
It was a short month.
It was a short month, yeah. Plenty to talk about. As always, Denise got one in early. She said, a bit of an obvious question, but do you think all the journalists' podcasts asking Eddie in, out, and speculating on who's leaving is just to keep their podcasts alive where there's no Premier League football? I mean, you touched on it a little bit earlier, didn't you, Mitch, about the kind of stuff we've gone on about it. And
stuff we try and avoid. It's pure engagement farming and sensationalism, and it's so lazy. It's so easy to do. It's so easy to do, and it's lazy, and particularly those who rely on high numbers for engagement and rely on that engagement to, source an income of some description, perhaps. The more controversial and sensational you are, it seems, the better it is for numbers and sound bites and being clipped and reused, etc., etc., etc. it's really exceptionally frustrating to me, because some of them change their opinions and flip-flop on things at the drop of a hat. So there's no consistency, to the point where you think, well, what is actually your opinion, other than what you think is going to get a degree of engagement this week? Some of them, I'm sure, would tell you that black was white to your face.
Yeah.
If they felt it was going to keep a level of engagement for them. It's lazy at best, disingenuous at worst, and it's something I know we desperately try to avoid, because it doesn't create a platform for any kind of sensible conversation or debate. It's where a lot of these non-zero-sum conversations come from, where everything has to be a yes or a no. There's no ability to have a proper, nuanced conversation about anything, because A, that takes too long, and you can't clip that down to a 30-second short, and B, that doesn't create enough engagement or sensationalism, and that's where it's at. And there's so many are guilty of it at the minute, including some of the journalists.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is, really, Steve. I mean, I've been going off it about various, media outlets for the last few years about the clickbait that they stick out there. But that is basically it. It's as if people can't come up with a topic to discuss whilst we've got no football. We've managed to do it for, best part of 6 years now without being sensationalistic.
That's it. I mean, you've got to have something to talk about. And we talk about the game. We talk about football in general. We talk about issues around the game. And we do our damnedest to get away from the how in, how out, performance-led scenarios that seem to keep people awake at night. There's an awful lot more going on in the world, an awful lot more going on in the football world. We all know, and I've seen it on the strapline there. We all know that the Newcastle rules. We all know what's happened. We all know where the football club is. We all know how difficult it's become. The false promises that were made, the manner in which the game has evolved, and we've been left behind purely from a business perspective. All of these things are additional obstacles that Eddie would never have dreamt that he was going to have to cope with, and I'm sure PAF never dreamt with either. And that's probably why they are a little bit more reserved and laid back than we wish they were. There are times to be laid back, and there are times to fight back. We've said it on here many times about the fight back, and it's never really materialized. We're now seeing a fight back with Everton, and we're seeing a fight back with Nottingham Forest with regards to what happens with Chelsea. Let's see how far that fight takes them, and whether that sort of emboldens other football clubs when decisions are made by football hierarchy to actually grasp the metal and realise that you have teeth as well as a club, not just going and you can rail against the league or you can rail against the board. You're not actually railing against the fellow clubs. You're railing against the decisions that are being made by some people that you're employing, because you're a shareholder in the company and you've got people making decisions. So as a shareholder, you've got every right to question the ability and the decision making of the people that are running the game. And that, I think, is where it's going to head with Everton, and it's going to head with Nottingham Forest and perhaps one or two others. Leicester, they managed to get away with it, but are getting hit now. But you look at the way the rest of the game is, Steve, and you look at what's happening in the EFL. You look at what's happening at the likes of Sheffield Wednesday. You look at you're thinking we've just brought a football regulator in, and what's the football regulator doing to help them? Absolutely nothing, and never will. Football clubs are spending money hand over fist. I think the average football club in the Championship is losing something like 90,000 a week. It's becoming unsustainable. And there's going to be a reset soon, and it all comes down to money, and players have got a lot to answer for in terms of the wages they get. But a player is only going to take the wage that somebody's going to offer him. Simple as that. There's these sort of conversations that people could be getting into, but instead they're getting into Eddie in, Eddie out, Eddie shake it all about. It's weird, but it's the nature of social media and clickbaiting and wanting to be top dog. Sadly.
Well, we see a classic example of it this week with that horrendous false story about Kevin Keegan that was leaked.
Yes.
And again, we know who's responsible for it. And you then played the victim on another account, saying, well, I just read it on Facebook. Aye, your own Facebook page, you nagger. But a desperation to be first with the news over something like that. And it's sick. It's absolutely sick.
Yeah.
And it's a poison within how certain people use and manipulate social media. This desperation to be the one to say, oh well, I broke that.
Yeah.
And it stinks. And it makes so many proper conversations very difficult to have, because there's always something like that, with some of them lurking in the background.
And quite
I
often,
try to ignore some of the stuff on social media, because otherwise it drives you dotty. But was it last week? There was so much about Tonali, and is it Tonali? Is it his agent? I decided to dig, and it wasn't Tonali. It wasn't his agent. It was another bloody player's agent that was spouting off. It wasn't anybody connected to Tonali at all. And you think to yourself, well, what the hell's that about? That's just somebody making mischief. And there's no need for it. All I hope is that Tonali has the brains, and I think he has, to let that ride over him. Otherwise, he's going to be involved. He is going to get involved. But I couldn't believe that people were saying, oh, well, it's his agent. Well, it wasn't his agent. It was somebody else's agent who was sticking the boot in. I just find all that ghastly, and part of the issues, and Steve's absolutely right, there's so much wrong about football at all levels, that a reset has got to come. But the reset I want to see is PIF digging their heels in with the Premier League. It's time we fought back.
Okay, great stuff, great views. Keep them coming in the chat as well. I'm putting as many comments as I can on the channel as possible. Tomorrow morning, incidentally, Ask Penman will be replacing the professionals this weekend. So at 10 o'clock in the morning, Ask Penman, and then Three's a Crowd will be Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. Caught up with Ted the Mackin face-to-face yesterday. It was good to see him. I hope he has a safe journey back to Cyprus. Okay, quick ad break, back after this.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com, or contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to United Group Travel, our fanzine sponsor. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2-crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach. All excursions included. Their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Or telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Deposits from £50 per person. A big thanks to Media Arts. Their website, www.media-arts.co.uk. Email info@media-arts.co.uk or telephone 0191 637 5061. If you want to help support the channel, then you can click the subscribe button. We still do 7 shows a week. It is free. hit the thumb up to like the video, and click share to share to your social media. A big thanks to Sports Social Podcast Network. You can listen to us on the road, on this network, or by tuning into iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. You can also join the channel by hitting the join button on YouTube, or go to our website, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. You can pay a one-off fee of £25 and you'll receive a membership card, a beer mat, a fridge magnet, a key ring, a badge, and a pen. £25, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk.
Let's lighten the mood a little. There is a disclaimer, and none of these tweets are created by Steve Wraith or NUFC Matters or endorsed by Steve Hasty, George Mitchell, or Neil Mitchell. We do laugh at them sometimes, we're allowed to, but we don't endorse them and we don't agree with them. And thanks to everybody who sent them in. We'll start off with a little bit of humour first. Sad news, of course, from the Nestle factory today. A worker was crushed beneath a case of chocolate that fell 20 feet off the storage racking. He called for help repeatedly, but every time he shouted, "The Milky Bars are on me," his colleagues cheered.
Hey.
Old one.
Oh dear.
Great name at the Winter Olympics from a couple of weeks ago, Andreas Wank. Wonder if that's the hand he uses. And I accidentally Googled Ham Solo instead of Han Solo this week, lads, and I wasn't disappointed.
DMV.
I've heard about this my whole life. Now I've finally seen it. Yeah, it's a fork in the road. And anything you say will be held against you.
Yay.
Oh dear.
Turns out it was a marble in the ashtray, says the mechanic. And what's the difference between a politician and a flying pig? The letter A. I'll give you 2 minutes. Waterloo, please. The station, says the cabbie. Well, I'm a bit late for the battle.
True.
Star Wars and Star Trek have come into the inbox. Paul Atkinson keeps sending these ones. Grandma used to say the best way to a man's heart is through his stomach. She was a terrible heart surgeon. And missing drunk man spent hours helping a search party look for himself. Few signs for everybody. It says it all, doesn't it? You think by now people would actually work out how to do the signs on their doors. Uranus Fudge Factory in America. Thanks, Jimmy.
Good old Jimmy.
Curl up and die, hair and beauty.
Like that.
Must be for old people. And Wilsford Cum Lake.
Right.
Sticky there, mate. Please do not flush anything other than bathroom tissue. Thank you. He puts turds in pockets, says Airport 0. And are you sweating while you're putting petrol into your car? Feeling sick when you pay for it? Then you've probably caught the 2026 strain of coronavirus.
Oh, very good.
And here is a picture from 2021 and one from 2026.
Yeah.
Got an Apple Watch this week, lads.
Oh,
It's quite cheap as well. And we're like these text ones. Dan, I got suspended from school. What? Why? The teacher pointed a ruler at me and said, "There's an idiot at the end of this ruler." So I asked which end. You're totally my son. Proud of you. And lads, I keep having the same dream where I'm a horse. 5 nights on the trot, I've had it.
Dear me.
oh dear.
And a woman in a jeweller's admiring a big diamond ring. As she leans down for a closer look, a little fart slips out. Hoping no one noticed, she asks, "How much is that one?" The jeweller says, "Madam, if you farted looking at it, you'll shit yourself when I tell you the price." And why was the baby jalapeno shivering, lads? He was a little chilly.
Oh.
Oh.
Imagine walking down the street and finding one of Rock's greatest monsters smoking quietly, said Rock History. Somebody sent me this week and said, are you sure that's not Steve Hasty? I haven't had one of them for a while, Steve.
We haven't, thank God.
Here's a Viz top tip. Pretend you're Zilly out of Catch the Pigeon by wearing one of those dry robes and sucking your head in when something frightens you. Have we blocked people in the 1980s?
True.
And this reminds me, lads, of taking a bath.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And we'll finish up. We'll finish up with this. When Freddy Krueger sends you a D pic.
Oh, Christ.
Some great ones there. Thank you to everybody. You can email us at nufcmatters8092@gmail.com. Don't go running and crying to the club because I've already done the disclaimer. The watch even comes with pips on every hour. Very good, Stephen. I see what you did there. We haven't got much to talk about, so we can take another question. Mark Byers says, who would you genuinely be gutted about if they left the club? Mark Byers says, for me, there's only Hall and Bruno Mitch.
Hall and Bruno, definitely. Walter, because I think there's so much potential there with him. We've got to change how we make him the focus of the attack. But if bloody Germany and Nagelsmann can do it, I'm sure we can. We've got a whole world of football at our disposal. Past that, I could make an argument for letting so many of the others go. It's not about letting people go for me. It's making sure they're replaced adequately, properly and promptly in a way that Isaac wasn't. And that's what it's about. I've banged on for ages on here, and it would be hypocritical of us to flip-flop on it now, that we've got to be better sellers. And sometimes that's knowing when a player, it's time for him to go. And sometimes it's knowing when we're going to get the absolute best value out of a player and how replaceable that player is. And I think we've got to learn that that's part of football too. That incomings and outgoings done properly. I'm going to use a phrase, and I can't believe I'm using it, in a transfer system within the club that's fit for purpose. Now, where have we heard that challenged before? Because patently, somebody may have had a point when he left. And that's one I think I'll probably have to concede. That, churn and understanding how can Bournemouth repeatedly lose 3 or 4 players a season and still remain challenging? How can Brighton do it? Players come, players go. They don't seem to be obsessed with becoming too attached to certain players. But even if you look at player churn at Man City, Chelsea had a formula for years, made millions on having huge squads, young players that came in and maybe were sensational for 4 or 5 games, and then were moved on because somebody in the club knew, well, actually, that's his purple patch done, and we're going to maximise what we'll get out of him. Kennedy, anybody? So that's all part of the game that we historically have been quite shit at, except in the 80s and 90s when we were brilliant sellers, but then we were terrible buyers. We've gone the other way now, and I think that's something we've got to learn. So for me, there's a handful of players, yes, you'd say you really want to hang on to them, But it's not just about who you let go, it's how you then replace them and how smart you are in terms of what you get out of the deal and how that money's reinvested.
Okay, Steve?
I
tell you, I'd be gutted if I genuinely would be gutted if Lewis Hall left. I agree with Mark Byers.
I agree.
For me, I would be gutted about Bruno as well, because Bruno has been a talisman. The only flip side of Bruno for me is he's getting on. He's been here, he's been here since the start of the takeover, more or less. He was our big signing, our first big signing, although many of us didn't even know who he was. But he's become, and the cup final showed me that he gets it. We've been talking about, does Eddie Howe get it? But what we've seen with Bruno is that speech at the cup final was raw emotion, and he gets it. He does get it. And he's when he's at the crowd and he's winding people up and he's doing that, it's genuine, Other players have taken that on board at other clubs now. They do it, but it's disingenuous. Whereas when Bruno does it, it's with passion and real love for this club. And I think even if Bruno left in the summer and went to Real Madrid or Barca or wherever, he'd go with a heavy heart, but he'd go with our blessing because he's been such a great servant and he's helped kickstart this and helped us win a trophy. But for me, I'd be gutted if Bruno left. But again, I would understand it. And I think that's probably what the Isak transfer has done to me. I think I'm accepting of it now. And bearing in mind, we all, the three of us, not George, because George has obviously supported the club a lot longer. We all went through Supermac, I think. Just maybe he's that round about that age group. He was probably the first big name that you would remember leaving, which would have been a gutting experience for you, especially in going to Arsenal. But we all come from that Gascoigne, Waddle, Beardsley era as well, where those three left, and we were a selling club. But it's for me, I think Bruno and Hall, I would agree with Mark Byers.
I agree wholeheartedly with those two names. There are other players in the squad that I would be disappointed if they left. But the whole key to it is where they go. And any of the players that go overseas, go to Germany, go to Spain, go to Italy, I'm quite happy. It would be with a heavy heart, but I would say good luck, get on with it. But the fact that in the situation that we are in at the moment, the league position that we're in, the season that we've had, and then to lose players to Man City, Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal, that would be gutting for me. The fact that I would have to then see players who, for one reason or another, we've had to get rid of. Liverpool with Isak as well. The only saving grace we've had with regards to Isak moving on was the fact he's been injured since the day he arrived. We've hardly seen him kick the ball from him, so it hasn't felt so bad. The only drawback has been that we haven't managed to replace him. But I'm looking and I'm thinking, I don't want to be at St James's Park when Anthony Gordon comes back and absolutely tears us apart. I'd only be there when Tonali comes back and tears us apart. Those type of players, we haven't got that many of the really, really top class players. I would say, Dan Burn left. I say, thanks, Dan. You've had a great year at the end of your career anyway. You're 34, 33, 34-year-old. You've had a great swan song. Thanks very much. Trippier, the same. The goalkeepers. Livramento, I think the injuries are catching up with him, and I don't think he's the same player. I think perhaps he needs. It's probably good. One of the downfalls of Livramento is if he gets on that England squad and he goes to the World Cup, and the lad will be even more exhausted at the start of next season. I think he's really suffered with the number of games. But then I look at the rest of them, and other than Harvey Barnes, who I think puts a shift in, I think the rest are either at the age where they need to be replaced, or they wouldn't be going to a club in that top five that I've mentioned. So I wouldn't feel too bad if they came back and they were playing for Aston Villa or Wolves or somebody like that, or Brighton or Bournemouth, Brentford. That would be it's just one of those things. But the idea of one of our top players going to a team above us, especially in the situation that we're in. The way that we've been treated by those other clubs, the way the contempt that they've had for us in terms of the financial limitations that they've insisted on being put on us over the last 3 or 4 seasons since the takeover, all of those things. Why should we then say we'll make them better? You know, and somebody mentioned there something that crossed my mind, and I was talking, you know, we need a training ground. Leicester City have got a fantastic training ground. Look what's happened to them after they won the league and the FA Cup, and look where they are now. So sometimes a training ground doesn't do you know, it doesn't attract the top class players that you think it attracts. And then somebody mentioned, you know, Bournemouth and their great work, and Brighton and their great work in the windows. Bournemouth, you're right, play once a week. Brighton play once a week. They play in front of 10,000 people. There's only 10,000 people at Bournemouth that are bothered, and that's why they get away with having a farm, if you like, or a recycling centre for footballers, and just moving them on and making money and growing in that way. And it's the same with Brighton. Brighton only sell, however, to Chelsea. We know that. They sell managers to Chelsea, they sell coaches to Chelsea, they sell sporting directors to Chelsea, and they sell footballers to Chelsea. Without Chelsea, Brighton would be nowhere financially. Having said that, Tony Bloom's done wonders, as Stewie keeps reminding us, at Hearts with his ability to find players. But Hearts in the Scottish Premiership is a different kettle of fish to, you know, the way that it operates in the Premier League. It'd be great for Scottish football if they win it, by the way. But his data-driven model is doing wonders, but it only does wonders for a certain length of time, I think. I don't think data finds you the top stars. It's a gamble, and it gets you. It finds you players that you can then sell on to somebody else. That's the whole idea of the data-driven model. Somebody that you can move on. I don't think Newcastle United should be that sort of football club, to be perfectly honest, because I hate the idea of you know, bringing Bruno in 4 years later and then selling them at 27.5, 28-year-old, because I still think the likes of a Bruno has the best years of his life in terms of football still to come, and I want that to be in a black and white shirt, and I want teams built around him, because I want Bruno there to actually bring those players on. We're talking about selling the football club. Bruno's selling the idea of being at Newcastle United. You know, the passion. If we're looking for passion from Eddie Howe, we probably don't need it. We've got the passion from Bruno. Get rid of Bruno's passion in the changing room. Who's going to fill the void? Because I don't think any of those. There's an awful lot of those players that have been treading water in that squad, and there are players who have now reached their end, age-wise, as well as ability-wise, and moving forward.
Same question to you, George.
Yeah, it's not difficult. I would be really upset if Hall, Bruno, Tonali, and I've got to agree with Neil. We need to get something out of Voltemada. There's a very talented footballer in there which we need to find. As far as I'm concerned, and my little information I have these days is that Livramento was already gone, is my information. And I'm not too upset about that, as long as you said we get a good price and we get somebody in replace in good time, ready for Eddie and the squad to do something with them over the summer, ready for the season to start, instead of hanging on till the last minute, has been happening in recent years. The interesting thing is, because Bruno, for me, we've just been talking about, has Eddie got the Geordie culture? Well, Bruno certainly has, and the memory for me, the big memory for me, there's lots with Bruno, but the biggest one was the Carabao Cup before it kicked off, and Gary Neville coming into the commentary room and saying, I hope Liverpool are up for this, because Newcastle are. I've just seen Bruno going up and down the line, slapping his lads on the back, saying, come on, you know, this is ours, get it. And, you know, that to me, at long last told me that we had a captain, not just a great player. We've got the potential to have a great captain as well. So he would be a really serious miss. And others would too, but I'm like Steve. If any of them leave, for goodness sake, I don't want them coming back and slaughtering with playing for somebody else, because that's the potential. That's the worry. So they've got to do what they can to keep those that are at the top of the tree, Chinali's as well, Bruno, etc., happy, and they will attract the others. The fact that they're there will attract the others. It's there's no doubt about it. That the players talk, you see them at the end of matches now with their hands over their mouth so that the camera can't see what they're saying. They're talking about all sorts of things, but one of the things I'm sure they talk about is that, and especially when they go on international duty as well, our clubs this, our clubs that, and get the best out of it. So it would be disaster if Bruno and Tall particularly were to disappear. It would just be unthinkable, to be perfectly honest. And I'll go further. I think Bruno will see his career out at Newcastle United. There you are. There's a forecast.
Okay, interesting. I mean, it's all about opinions. Of course, George, as George is putting it out there that he's heard that might happen with Tino, but we don't endorse that. We don't know that. And that's why we avoid that kind of speculation on this channel, because, it just leads to what's happening with one of our journalists at the minute, who has put a story out yesterday that is, unfortunately for him, getting pelters by the fan base because it's been knocked on the head by various people. So it's always best to err on the side of caution. If you hear a stable whisper, probably best not to pass it on. JRWS, thank you for this. Does Mitch, or the panel for that matter, believe what is currently going on in the Middle East and oil geopolitics, with Saudi potentially getting involved in the war, will it affect anything with PIF? It's really just a question for you, Mitch, on that score. What do you think?
Alan Ramian was at a conference in Miami this week where he says that PIF's new vision for the next 10 years is going to be discussed imminently. So no is a short answer. If you want to take the Guardian at their face value, when they were telling me that oil per barrel was dropping rapidly and that was a disaster for Newcastle United and funding, well, oil's over $100 a barrel now. So what does that make for our funding? Does that mean now it's automatically thumbs up, go spend the money, boys? You can make numerous arguments for one reason or another. But with a fund like PIF, they manage things strategically and for the long term. There's management plans and funding plans in place for a long term. And it doesn't flip-flop on the back of regional conflict. It would have to... The conflict in this region would have to accelerate to a level where it was uncomfortable, impossible to live here, to get to the point where I would be concerned about Newcastle United's relationship with the owners.
Yeah.
The way the price of oil is going at the minute, they're making more money per second as every day goes on just by having the stocks that they have in hand. And they've got ways around the Straits of Hormuz that they're already working on. So again, they're not going to be as affected as some people would love to believe, because there's people with agenda against Newcastle United, agenda against Saudi ownership of Newcastle United, and so all of that, like we kept telling you, it would never go away, and it hasn't gone away. And so, for me, the as it stands at the moment, no, it does not affect us.
Okay. Good stuff.
Ask us that question again in 2 months' time.
Right.
And
Okay.
then I'll tell you what my thoughts are if things are still going. Because yes, the region is being affected business-wise. It would be disingenuous and deceitful of me to say anything otherwise. I can tell you that from a personal point of view. And you know, from my point of view, my diary gets affected twofold at the minute. Once the minute a missile alert goes off on the phones, then people start cancelling. And then at the minute, because we've had a month's worth of rain in 24 hours, because we've got regional flooding in Dubai, that's led to a downturn in my diary. So as it stands tomorrow, it's an Ask Penman, not a professionals. But if my diary gets cleared out, I might be able to jump on and join you for a little bit. When he's mid-flow, as it stands, I'm supposed to be doing a load of surgery around about the time that the Ask Penman starts. Let's see what tomorrow brings, because I'll be honest with you, my diary's never been as fluid as this. To the point where I've now stopped checking my diary tomorrow, because by the time tomorrow comes, it's going to be totally bloody different anyway. So what's the point? And it's actually quite a cathartic way to work. I wish I'd learned this years ago. But yeah, let's see where we're at in a couple of months' time, and I'll give you another opinion on it, mate. Okay,
I'm going to move on to something that I brought to the table tonight. I found this quite interesting. As we know, a World Cup always brings new rules and regulations for the game. And I'm sure I didn't pass you guys by on social media. So, George, I'll come to you first so you don't have to wait and give the last opinion on this. Here are FIFA's official new rules for the 2026 World Cup, George. 1. Quick substitutions. When a player is taken off, he's got 10 seconds to leave the pitch. If they take longer, their replacement will have to wait 1 minute before entering, leaving his team with one fewer player. Bear in mind, these are coming in the World Cup, and this isn't Francis Chip who's put this out, by the way. 2. Throw-ins, George. Throw-ins and goal kicks. Once a throw-in or goal kick takes place, a 5-second timer will be applied. If the player takes longer than 5 seconds, it'll result in the loss of possession. The next one, medical attention. The player receiving medical attention on the field must leave and wait 1 minute before returning on the pitch, unless the injury was caused by a foul sanctioned with a card. 4. VAR expansion. VAR will now be able to review second yellow cards that have led to a red, as well as incorrectly awarded corner kicks. And finally, 5. Captain and referees. Only the captain is allowed to request explanations from the referee. If the rest of the players talk to the referee or surround the referee, they will be given a yellow card, which is something that I thought was already in the game.
Yeah.
So, George, feel free to ask us to put them back up, because I know it's a lot to take in. I'll stick them ones up first, so you can do them in order. But anything that gets your goat, George, in the new rules and regs that are coming in, which of course will eventually get
to be honest, there's a blanket thing I would say is that a lot of those suggestions that are being made, if they just applied the bloody rules we've got now, they wouldn't need to do all of that. I mean, the captain and referees one, the last one, that was supposed to be in at the start of this season, and they weren't going to let that happen. And it lasted about a fortnight. Now, Manchester United are the most skilled. As soon as anything happens, you get 8 Manchester players around the referee. In fact, I firmly believe it was the Manchester players who got our player sent off in the match against us at St James's Park.
100%.
Yeah, you could see them saying, you need to think about this ref, you need to think about that ref, and the ref thought and sent them off. It just that's that one. The first one was what? Sorry, Steve, it was.
There you go. I'll put it up. Quick substitutions.
Yeah. Again, that's fine. Anything that gets the game moving again, I'm for. But how long will it last? You know, if it lasts more than a couple of games, I'll be absolutely amazed. But give it a try. If it's speeding the game up, getting things going, all right, fine. And it'll stop the interference from people on the touchline as well, or it should. The second one?
Bear with us, George.
Throw-ins and goal kicks.
Oh, throw-ins and goal kicks. Oh, my God. Again, if they could just get the bloody throw-ins taken at the place where they should be taken, would be a start. Or if they don't give a foul throw, give the possession to the other team. That's just another piece of nonsense as far as I'm concerned. There's rules there that could govern that if the referees just applied them. And I sometimes wonder if they even know them, never mind apply them, the way I watch things at St James's Park. Some of the assistants we get at St James's Park, I definitely wonder just how much education they've had on things like throw-ins and goal kicks and what have you. But, if it speeds the game up, does things differently, I'm not against it. And there was another one.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few, George, like I say, VAR expansion and captain and referees. There was throw-ins and goal kicks and medical attention.
Well, I've already, the VAR expansion is great, except when they're going to do something about the corrupt ways being used at the moment, because that's all you can say about it. We've had two examples, and the Sunderland one was another one, where we could goal disallowed. VAR looked at it. The two inside Stockley Park box said goal, but the boss, who was in charge of the box at Stockley Park, said no goal, so it was disallowed. The fans should hear that. And until they do, like they do in rugby, like they do in cricket, I'm sorry to go on with the same sort of mantra, it'll always, for me, be regarded as suspect. So, yes, that's speeded up, but let's get it right as well.
Okay, Steve, we've been down this road many times before. Some of them are ludicrous, some of them take off. What's your feelings on the new set of rules coming in for the World Cup?
Right, this is a World Cup. This is to speed the game up. This is a World Cup that's going to be played in 95-degree heat. This is a World Cup. This is a World Cup where they're going to have breaks for drinks, guaranteed, because there's going to be games kicking off, in the burning hot sun of, the Arizona desert. It's going to be like Death Valley in some of these games. Be lucky if a player can walk off after 30 seconds. The way things are going, the way the temperatures are going to be. Some of this is typical UEFA. It's all geared to the TV. It's all geared to, like, let's get the game moving as quick as we can, because we've got to get to those drinks breaks, because those drinks breaks are going to have adverts in. That type of scenario is going to arise. The quick subs. It's always annoying when a substitution takes a while, but invariably what we find in the Premier League, it's the disorganisation of the fourth official who can barely get the number up at times. The referee who sees a signal, and then the board goes up afterwards, and then they find out they put the wrong number in, and all these type of things. The quick throw-ins, again, it's a farce. It's sometimes not possible to take a throw-in quick. Sometimes you're in a situation where, yes, you see them taking 25, 30, 40 seconds to take it in. But that's within the referee's remit to speed it up. You don't need to have this arbitrary 5-second rule. It's the same with the goalkeepers, They've fooled around with goalkeepers that many times. There was a time when a goalkeeper could pick the ball up and run with it. There was a time when a goalkeeper could bounce the ball, and that got taken out. Then it was 4 steps, and then it was 6 steps. Now it's 8 seconds, and so it goes on. These people, they fiddle around with the game, and it just becomes a farce. There's that much going on. The VR interventions, there are reasons why we wouldn't VR intervene, other than there's been the referee's made a decision to book somebody, and then he finds out he's already booked him and it's a red, and then you're going to revert it back. Why? Why would you do that? If it's a foul, it's a foul. It's a second foul. What's the point of going back and double checking? I don't understand that one unless I've misread it. You know, you've already been booked. You then get booked again for something, and then it's going to be a red. So what are they going to do? They're going to have VAR to look at it to then go, yes, yeah, it should be a second booking, or it's not a booking in the first place. Well, that's undermining the referee, because it's the referee who's made the decision it's a booking. You know, and you know, these are, you know, the best will in the world. Let the game flow. You know, there are other reasons why we would want VAR to intervene. There are other situations we want them to intervene. You know, and they don't intervene. And it's that frustrating aspect of it, you know, because they go, and then, I mean, the most annoying thing for me when it comes to VAR is when you get the VAR check. They're told by someone in Stockley Park, we're going to look at that. Oh, we changed our mind. The referee never finds out what the problem was in the first place, you know. He doesn't then go over and check, you know, or have a say, and it undermines them. Referees are being undermined all the time. They don't do themselves any favours. And I thought in European games, the referees have primarily been getting it right until it came to the knockout rounds, and then we started to see VAR intervening, and we started to hit the referees letting things go. You know, the PSG, the Barcelona game, a prime example in both legs. Decision making. That's the sort of thing we want VAR to look at. We want to go, whoa, referee, why didn't you book them for that? That's foul. We want those, and we want that in his ear. You've made a mistake. That should have been a yellow. Book them, rather than, oh, you know what, you should have booked them, but we're letting them get away with it. It's the cynical side of the game that we want VAR to chip into, you know, areas like that, rather than, you know, ending up with fiddling around with a 5-second throw in.
Mitch, what's your thoughts on these potential
you know
rule changes?
What's going to happen in the States with things which have got a 10 and a 5-second countdown? The crowd's going to start counting.
Oh yeah,
and then going raf, 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 with not actually understanding when the time starts, when the time stops. The idea that you've got to go off for a minute after you've been injured, after you've needed medical treatment, that then penalises somebody who needs medical treatment, who has been actively fouled. It then penalises the team awarded the free kick. Yes, I'm all for finding measures to stop simulation. That what Cole Palmer did against us, clutching his shin and rolling around, clutching his shin, when it was clear nothing had touched his shin at all, was pathetic, by the way, and he's not been called out enough for that. But yes, I'm all for measures to stop that shit. But when it leads to a situation where a team could be penalised and they've been the team that's been fouled, that seems a little bit unfair to me. Expanding VAR, fucking hell, they can't get enough right to begin with. Let's give them some more things to get wrong. That just sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
It really, really does. What's the fifth one again?
We had quite a few. Where was it? There we go.
Oh, captain referee. Yeah, I thought that was already in.
Yeah.
It might be in the Premier League, but not necessarily the world organisation. So I get that. Let's see any referee who's got the balls to actually action that. The first time they've got half of Uruguay surrounding the referee, because it'll be a team like that. And I don't just pluck that out the air because they're playing England tonight, by the way. You know, I'm thinking of let's think of not necessarily the biggest team, but a team middling in South America who can get a little bit spiky at times, and they've got a few little gobshites play for them. Let's see a referee who's brave enough to do that.
That poor, quiet, small little referee from Ethiopia.
We could end up with something ridiculous, like an early round of the World Cup game, finishing with like 9 versus 10. if you apply the rules like that. And can you say any of the referees having the balls to do that? Does any of the referees want to be the first one that sent someone off because of that kind of incident surrounding the referee? And yeah, it's got to be stopped, because absolutely that's what led to Ramsey getting. That referee had no thought about sending Ramsey off until Maguire, then Fernandez, and then Casemiro eventually lumbered up because he was slightly out of breath because it took him so long to get to the referee. But you know, he was nowhere near his pocket until that happened. So that has to be stopped. But let's see who's brave enough to do it.
I mean, we have had some crazy referees in the World Cup. Do you remember that? Do you remember the crazy Welshman who blew as soon as the corner was taken?
Yes.
Against Brazil.
The ball was still in the air.
Yeah, that was 82, or even no, might have been 78.
78, mate. Yeah.
He blew as the corner was being taken, and I think they scored from it, didn't they? And he disallowed it. It was a crazy Welshman who was the
whistle went before the
first division all the way for years and years, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Somebody asking if I can get Liam on the podcast. We're just avoiding having anybody on of that ilk. Yeah, like we don't get journalists on. I get Ben Jacobs on maybe twice a year these days. So, we did that for a while. We had great relationships with Liam, but Liam didn't have his own podcast then, and it's just not conducive. Craig Hope's not allowed to because it's a Daily Mail podcast, because we'd like to have had Craig Hope on with the professionals. We talked about it for quite a while, but Craig very kindly came back and explained the situation, and he couldn't do it. So yeah, we've moved on from crossovers, and it was the kind of thing you did in the early days with podcasts. Where I went on Adam Pease, he came on here. I went on that American guy's podcast, and he came on here. Yeah. We've done all of that. I did quite a few over the years, but it's better just staying in your own lane and just being on. And if you've got a question for Liam Kennedy, go and subscribe to the Geordie Journos and ask a question there, and he'll give you a straight answer. And everyone has to do different things, but they stay in their lane, we stay in ours, and that's the way we like it. So and it's a bit like, I put a post up the other day about not doing TV. I went on Radio Newcastle last night. It's the first time I've done anything since 2021, but I went on to promote my event, and I specifically said I didn't want to talk about Newcastle United. So I just wanted to go on, promote my event and come off, which is what I did. I've got a NUFC Matters, which is where I come. I walked out to the ground after the Sunderland game with one of our pals, the Heat, who you'll have heard about, and he'll tell you, TalkSport and BBC and ITV were hanging around outside the ground, and one of the lads recognised us and went, Steve, would you come and do an interview? No, I don't do them anymore. So I genuinely don't do them. It's exactly the same it's exactly the same reason, because I've done all of that. I don't need to do any more. I've got this channel, and I like coming on here and just being able to give my own opinion, unvetted, unedited, and chatting with my mates, which is what I do. So thank you for the suggestion. It's the same, pretty much the same with Keith Patterson. People keep asking about Keith. Now, Keith may well come back on at some point, but at the minute, there's nothing to have Keith on about. And we see Keith every home game. We'll bump into Keith, we're singing, we're chatting to him, we'll keep in touch with him, some of us more than others. But we all still speak to Keith, and we'll always be thankful for the way that he conducted himself and what he did during the takeover. I think when Man City's results come through at some point, which according to some journalists could be sooner rather than later, we'll have Keith on to dissect it and tell us what he thinks could happen. But at the moment, we'll stay in our own lane, because NUFC does matter. And with 54,000 subscribers, we're clearly making an impression on you lot out there, and we'll continue to do so, but in our own way. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Thanks to George. Thanks to Steve. Thanks to Mitch. Back in the morning with Ask Penman, 10 o'clock.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you all. Good to see you all.